All right, so today's lesson, the first lesson, is on the core graphs. We're going to just go through 8 parent functions, most of which we're going to study in detail throughout this year. But this is just a quick introduction, a quick glance at the 8 core parent functions. Having a good understanding of these 8 parent functions, basically memorizing what the shape looks like, some of the key points that it goes through, some of the key characteristics, is going to help you with the different chapters we're going to be going through throughout this year, because a lot of what we're studying is how these graphs change and transform depending on the function that's given. So we're going to just kind of take a look at each graph one at a time, okay? So the first function, f of x equals 1, this is known as your constant function. Now remember, this is function notation. If you want to change f of x to y and think of it as y equals 1, that would work as well. Again, this is your constant function. All right. So for the constant function, the y values are the same, or in other words, constant, for every x value. Okay, so for every single x value that is given, like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, the y value is constant. The y value is always going to be 1. Okay, so if you plot these points, what would that look like? Well, -2 on the x, 1 on the y, -1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1. This is what your constant function looks like. Okay, so again, knowing the basics is going to help you as we learn to transform these graphs. Okay, the next one is f of x equals x. Okay, this is known as your linear function, which you studied a lot in Algebra 1. Your linear function is a line, and it intersects the y-axis at 0, 0. Okay, the domain, talking about the x values, and the range, referring to the y values, all real numbers. Okay, so domain and range is all real numbers. All right, so we'll look at the graph again at -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Remember this function, f of x equals x, that's written in function notation. You can think of it again as y equals x, so the y's and the x's should be equal. So if x is -2, y would be -2 as well. -1, 0, 1, 2. So if I was to graph this, when x is -2, y is -2. When x is -1, y is -1. 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. There's your linear function. Okay, graph of the line. All right, the next function, that's 2 of 8. Number 3 is f of x equals the absolute value of x. Again, you can think of it as y equals the absolute value of x instead of in function notation. For graphing purposes, sometimes that's easier. This is known as the absolute value function. All right. For the absolute value function, it crosses the y-axis at 0, 0. It has a domain, x values, all real numbers. The range for the parent function, the core function, and you'll see this in a second when we graph, it's only the positive y values, so y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay? So for your table of values, we'll again take a look at x at -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. If you think about plugging these x's in, so if you plug in -2, the output is going to be a +2, +1, 0, +1, +2. So if I was to graph those points, so -2, +2, -1, +1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. It's a V. Okay, it's a V. Again, the domain is all reals. You have negative x values, positive x values, 0. But the range, the y values, are only 0 and above. You only have positive y values. You don't have any negative y values. The graph is not down here in these two quadrants where the y values are negative. All right? So that's your third function out of the 8. The fourth function, f of x equals x squared. This is another function you studied in detail in Algebra 1, and we're going to work on it a lot this year as well. It's a quadratic function. All right, for the quadratic function, it also crosses the y-axis at 0, 0. And the domain, it's all real numbers. And the range is y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay. Your table of values, we'll again take a look at -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. So if your input is -2, -2 squared is +4. -1 squared is 1. 0 squared is 0. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. I plot those points. -2, 4. -1, 1. Ugly dot. 0, 0. 1, 1. And 2, 4. And it makes a nice parabola U shape. Okay. That was number 4 out of the 8 we're going to look at. The fifth function, f of x equals the square root of x. The name of it, being that there's a square root in it, is called the square root function. Square root function. It crosses the y-axis at 0, 0. The domain, x has to be greater than or equal to 0, and the range, y has to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay. Your table of values, we're going to take a look at -1, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 4. Okay, so if you try to take the square root of -2 right now, we would say you can't. Okay, your calculator would say error. So I'm just going to do ERR for error. If you try to take the square root of -1, also error. Up until our knowledge right now in math, we always say you can't take the square root of a negative number. Not in our real number values anyway. Square root of 0 is 0. Oh, this is 0. Square root of 1 is 1. And square root of 4 is 2. Okay, and we could keep going. I'd probably try 9 next. The square root of 9 is 3. Try your perfect square values because then you get nice values to graph. All right, so we start at 0, 0. That's the first point I can plot. Then 1, 1. Then 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. If I want to keep going, I do 9, 6, 7, 8, 9, 3. Okay, so it's taking the shape here. All right, so that is your square root function. The next one f of x equals x cubed. So you guess what this one's called? F of x equals x cubed. It's called the cubic function. All right, so some characteristics to know. Crosses the y-axis at 0, 0. I don't know if this is hard for you guys to see. I'm going to change to my black. That's kind of not showing up very nicely. The domain and range are both all raw numbers. Domain referring to the x values, the range referring to the y values. Okay. All right, table of values. Same numbers we'll look at, x and y, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. So you plug -2 in, -2 cubes. That's -2 times -2 times -2 is a -8. -1 cubed, -1 times -1 times -1 is a -1. 0 cubed is 0, 1, and then 8. Okay? If we were to graph this function, so -2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 8. So the graph takes on this shape there. Okay. So that was number 6 out of 8. 2 more to go. All right. Next we have f of x equals 1 over x, which is called your reciprocal function. All right, for your reciprocal function, it never intersects the y-axis. Your domain and your range are the same. I'll write it twice. It's all reals except 0. All reals except, 0. Okay? Which makes sense. Okay, you can't have 0 in the bottom of a fraction, so x can never be 0. All right, so your table of values, we're going to, I think we're going to extend it just a bit. Yeah, I'm going to do -2, -1, -1 half, 0, 1 half, 1, and 2. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. 1 and 2. Okay. So if you plug in -2, you're going to have -1 and a half. If you plug in -1 for x, you're going to have -1. If you plug in -1 half, that's going to be a -2. If you plug in 0, you can't divide by 0. It doesn't work. If you try in your calculator, it's going to say error or undefined. Okay. If you plug in 1, what am I doing next? Sorry, 1 half, you're going to have 2. If you plug in 1, it's going to be 1. And then 2 is going to be 1 half. All right, so let's take a look at the graph. Plot -2. So you go over 2, down just a half a unit. Then you go over 1, down 1. Then you go over a half a unit down 2. Here you're going to go over a half a unit and then up 2. Then you go over 1, up 1, and then over 2, up a half. All right, and that's what the graph looks like. That was number 7 of 8, so we're on to our very last parent function. Okay, the last parent function is f of x equals 2 raised to the x. This function has an exponent. It's called the exponential function. All right, so this one crosses the y-axis at 0, 1. And your domain is all reals. Your range is y is greater than 0. All right, we're going to make our table of values. And we'll stick with all the same. So we'll do -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Now, you may be able to do this off the top of your head. You might not be used to, comfortable, familiar with working with negative exponents, although it was taught in Algebra 1. All right, so if you have 2 to the -2, you're going to make that 1 over 2 to the +2, which is 1/4. Okay, so the next one would be 2 to the -1, which is 1 over 2 to the +1, which is 1/2. All right, anything raised to the 0 power is 1. 2 to the first is 2. 2 to the second is 4. Okay, then I'm going to plot those. Alright, so -2 and then up just like 1/4 of the way. That's like super low. Over -1 up half of the way. Then 0, 1. Remember it said it crosses at 0, 1. Then 1, 2. And then 2, 4. It's raising, it's rising exponentially. Starts out slow and then spikes up. Okay. Alright guys, so that is the last of your parent functions, your quick little introduction to parent functions. Again, knowing this information, kind of having it memorized, or at least knowing how to come up with the graphs quickly is really going to help you throughout this school year with all the different functions we're going to be studying. So finish taking your notes, and I'll see you back here for the next lesson. Bye!